title. My husband called me his charity case, so I shut down the charity at his father's retirement party. For 6 years I lived inside a painting I didn't paint. The painting was called The Alcantara Family. And I, Livia, was the exotic, slightly discordant brushstroke in the corner of the canvas. I married the heir, the firstborn son, Dr. Ricardo Alcantara, and in doing so I married his surname, his prestige, and his clan of wolves dressed in linen and silk. The Alcantaras didn't walk, they glided. Owners of a network of luxury hospitals and clinics, they viewed the world from above. I, on the other hand, came from below, the daughter of a mechanic and a seamstress. I got a scholarship, graduated from law school at the top of my class, and went to work as a junior associate at a firm that happened to service the Alcantara empire. That's how I met Ricardo. He seemed different. He was genuinely enchanted by my ambition, by my story, telling me I was real, a breath of fresh air in his rarefied world. And I, blinded by love, ignored the warning signs. The signs were in the compliments from my mother-in-law, Esther, which always sounded like an appraisal of how well I had adapted. They were in the way my father-in-law, Dr. Elio, would explain the notes of a wine to me as if I were a child. They were in the jokes from my brother-in-law, Mauricio, about my street smarts having won his brother's heart. I swallowed it all with a smile and worked twice as hard to fit in. All for Ricardo. 'Cause at night, he would hold me and tell me I was the best part of his life. And I believed him. First crack in the painting appeared because of a cell phone. Ricardo had bought the latest iPhone and offered me his old one. My phone was on its last legs, so I accepted. He asked me to transfer his data before I wiped the device, admitting his cloud backup was a mess and that I was so much better with technology than he was. Course I was. I was the chief operating officer of his perfect life. That evening, I sat in our home office to do the transfer. As the files were moving, a message notification popped up on the old phone screen. The group name was Alcantara the Wall. The message was from my brother-in-law, Mauricio. It was a casual instruction for someone to tell Ricardo not to let his charity case pick the music for their father's party, followed by a jab about my taste. Charity case. The phrase hung in front of me, the white letters glowing. A buzzing started in my ears. My hands began to tremble. His charity case. They were talking about me. With my heart hammering against my ribs, I tapped the notification. The app opened, revealing a chat history that stretched back for years. Years of my life. And as my eyes scanned the first few lines, the floor beneath me didn't just crack. It opened into a bottomless abyss. And I was in free fall. Part 2, The Digital Autopsy. It was a plunge through icy black space, with the years of my marriage flashing before my eyes like debris. Every smile, every shared dinner was now tainted. For a long moment, I couldn't breathe. My official title in the Alcantara dynasty was Charity Case, a role I had been performing for 6 years without ever seeing the script. My first instinct was to throw the phone against the wall. But a different feeling, something cold and sharp, cut through the pain. It was the lawyer in me, the girl who had to be twice as smart and 3 times as tough to get half as far. She had been dormant for years, sedated by love and luxury, but now she was wide awake. And she was furious. With a deep, shuddering breath, I began to scroll. My life was laid out before me in a timeline of mockery. I saw them dissecting our engagement announcement, Mauricio questioning if Ricardo was serious, and my mother-in-law remarking on my efficiency. Ricardo's defense of me was so weak it felt like an apology to them. I saw them critiquing the dress I wore to their annual hospital gala, Esther calling it tacky, and Mauricio saying I was desperately trying. Ricardo had claimed it was a gift and that I looked beautiful, which was met with Mauricio's biting sarcasm about what a saint his brother was. They even made fun of my parents. After my father had a heart-to-heart with Dr. Elio about vintage cars, the chat filled with my father-in-law's dry remarks about the riveting discussion on carburetors and Mauricio's warning about getting grease on his polo shirt. Ricardo had tried to smooth it over, creating distance by referring to my father as her dad. My family was a curiosity, an exhibit in their pristine museum. The worst was Ricardo's slow transformation. In the early years, his messages were lukewarm defenses. Then they became apologies for my existence. Finally, they became active participation. About a year ago, I had organized a surprise 40th birthday party for him. He had cried in my arms, telling me it was the best night of his life. The chat told a different story. Esther found the music common. Mauricio asked where I found my friends, comparing them to a telenovela casting call. And then Ricardo's message. He acknowledged their complaints, explaining that he had to let me have my little projects because it kept me busy. He ended by confessing that managing my social ambitions was a full-time job and that he was exhausted. Exhausted by my love. My effort was a burden to be managed. I sat there until dawn, the phone's battery dwindling along with the woman I used to be. The love I had for Ricardo didn't just die, it putrefied. I wasn't a wife. I was his grand philanthropic endeavor. I plugged the phone in and began to work. I screenshotted every conversation, every insult. I created a folder on a secure cloud service, far from their reach. I named the folder The Reckoning. The upcoming retirement party for Dr. Elio, a massive affair celebrating his lifetime of integrity, was in 3 weeks. It was to be the social event of the season. They thought their wall kept them safe. They never considered that I was already on the inside. I wasn't just going to leave. I was going to tear their wall down. My charity case was about to become their worst liability. Part 3: The Trojan Horse. The 3 weeks leading up to the party were the performance of my life. I became the wife they always wanted, an automaton of pleasantries. I smiled through dinners, nodded attentively to my mother-in-law's condescending advice, and listened to Ricardo's self-important stories. The real me was in the office late at night, planning a war. My weapon was delivered to me by their own arrogance. At a Sunday lunch, Dr. Elio was pontificating about his legacy and the upcoming party. This was my opening. I offered, in a voice carefully measured to sound sincere and timid, to create a tribute video for him as a gift. A retrospective of his career and family, a project from his newest Alcantara. Esther's eyes lit up. She praised the thoughtful idea, remarking on how good I was with these things. Ricardo beamed, patting my hand, telling his family that I thought of everything. The Trojan horse was inside their gates. For the next 2 weeks, my life had a dual purpose. By day, I was the doting daughter-in-law, gathering photos and showing my progress to Esther for her approval. I created a beautiful 10-minute video filled with smiling faces and soaring music. It was a masterpiece of manufactured sentimentality. This was the safe version. By night, I worked on the real version. I learned basic video editing. I wove their own words into the fabric of their perfect family photos. The picture of Ricardo and me on our honeymoon was followed by a screenshot of him complaining about the trip. A photo of me smiling with Esther at Christmas was paired with her critique of my dress. I timed each reveal for maximum impact. The final cut was 13 minutes long, filled with the ugliest truths. The day of the party, our apartment felt like a backstage dressing room. Ricardo was ecstatic, telling me the night would be perfect, a huge moment for his father and for them. I agreed, my voice a perfect echo of a supportive wife. I wore a simple, elegant black dress, a final private joke for myself. We drove to the lavishly decorated ballroom. Hundreds of people milled about, judges, politicians, the cream of society. Every single person represented a pillar of the Alcantara's reputation. A reputation I was about to reduce to rubble. The venue, I charmed the young AV technician, a man I had tipped generously earlier in the week, who confirmed that the remote app on my phone was synced and ready to switch the video source at my command. As we walked in, Ricardo put his arm around my waist, whispering to a passing colleague about his beautiful wife, declaring that I was the best thing that had ever happened to him. I smiled up at him, a perfectly loving gaze. The stage was set. The audience had arrived. And the lead actress was ready for her final performance. Part 4, The Reckoning. The evening unfolded. After dinner, the lights dimmed. Dr. Elio took the stage to thunderous applause. He spoke for 20 minutes, a rambling speech about his legacy being built on a foundation of honesty and family values, even acknowledging the wonderful daughter who had joined his family. He smiled at me. I smiled back. Then it was Ricardo's turn. He walked to the podium, glowing with pride. He called his father a great man and announced that his wonderful, talented wife, Livia, had prepared a small video tribute. He gave me a wink and nodded to the technician. The lights went down. The screen flickered to life with the opening montage of the safe version. The soaring orchestral music began. The Alcantara family was beaming. Ricardo leaned over and squeezed my hand, whispering in my ear that it was perfect. I just thought to myself, just wait. As a smiling photo of the four of them filled the screen, I pressed the command on my phone. The screen went black for a single, jarring second. The music cut out. A collective gasp went through the room. And then a new image appeared, the screenshot of Mauricio's text, asking someone to tell Ricardo not to let his charity case pick the music. The silence in the ballroom was absolute. I saw Mauricio's face, a mask of pure horror. Esther's hand flew to her mouth. Before anyone could react, the next slide appeared. A photo of me at the gala, next to Esther's text calling my dress tacky and new money without the money. The whispers started. Then came the cascade. A photo of my father laughing with Elio, followed by Elio's text mocking him. A picture of me and Ricardo on our anniversary, followed by his message that managing my ambitions was a full-time job that left him exhausted. I could see Ricardo on his feet, his voice cracking as he yelled for someone to turn it off, insisting there was a mistake. But the technician, following my instructions, ignored him. The final image held on the screen, my official title, his charity case. Then it faded to black. The house lights came up just enough to illuminate the shattered family at the head table. Before the chaos could erupt, I stood and walked calmly to the podium. "Good evening," I said, my voice perfectly steady. "For the past 6 years, I have had the privilege of being welcomed into the Alcantara family. A family, as you've just heard from Dr. Elio himself, built on a foundation of honesty and integrity." I looked at them, melting like wax statues under the lights. "I was a project for them," I continued. "A girl from a humble background to be polished, presented, and privately mocked. My efforts were tiresome. My family was a joke. My love was a job for my husband to manage." I looked directly at Ricardo. "You called me your charity case. An act of philanthropy. Well, the project is complete. I have adapted, just as your mother always praised me for. I've learned the family business. And the business's image. Perception. And tonight I've given you all a more accurate perception of the truth." I reached up and unclasped a simple diamond necklace Ricardo had given me. I placed it on the podium. Then I slid my wedding ring from my finger and set it beside the necklace. "Consider this my final donation," I said to the silent room. "This charity is officially closed. Effective immediately." I turned, walked off the stage, and did not look back. I could feel hundreds of eyes on me as I walked through the ballroom. I pushed open the heavy doors and stepped out into the cool night air. The sounds of the implosion behind me were faint. I was alone. I had no husband, no powerful family, no safety net. But as I stood there under the vast open sky, I took the first breath of my own life. And for the first time in 6 years, I was not a project, a painting, or a charity case. I was free. The next morning, the news had already devoured the Alcantaras. Clips of the party flooded every social feed. Headlines called it the fall of the perfect family. Even the tabloids I used to side-eye at the checkout line now had my photo, frozen mid-stride as I walked away from the ballroom, the doors still open behind me like a gaping wound. Their empire, so dependent on spotless reputation, began to hemorrhage within hours. The board demanded explanations. Investors panicked. Journalists camped in front of the hospitals. Statements were issued, retracted, and revised. But none of them mattered. Truth was already loose, viral, undeniable. I stayed in a small hotel by the beach, the kind of place with mismatched curtains and the smell of strong coffee. It was almost poetic. After years of marble floors and designer silence, I found comfort in chipped paint and seagulls screaming for crumbs. I turned my phone off for 3 days. I slept. De Pataquejo in bed. I cried only once, not out of grief but release. When I finally powered my phone back on, there were hundreds of messages. Some from journalists offering money for interviews. Others from strangers, women who said they saw themselves in me. Secretaries, doctors, teachers, mothers. "You reminded me I'm not crazy," one woman wrote. "I'm just tired of being small to make someone else big." I didn't reply to any of them, but I read them all. Every single one. And for the first time, the word case didn't feel like an insult. It felt like precedent. Cardo tried to call, of course. The first voicemail was furious. The second begged. The third, almost pitiful. "We can fix this," he said, his voice trembling. "Please, Livia. You've made your point." I didn't delete the messages. I simply archived them. Evidence, not of a crime, but of a closure. Weeks passed. The Alcántaras issued a public apology, blaming miscommunication and private family tension. The internet wasn't buying it. Sponsors pulled out of their events. The hospitals rebranded. Mauricio disappeared from social media. Esther was spotted leaving a clinic. Dr. Elio resigned from 3 boards for health reasons. As for me, I began to rebuild, brick by honest brick. I moved back to my old neighborhood and rented a small office above my father's garage. The sign on the frosted glass door read Livia Duarte, Family Law and Corporate Ethics Consulting. My first clients were women from foundations, nonprofits, and startups who had faced the same invisible ceilings I once polished. I helped them negotiate contracts, defend their names, and keep their dignity intact. Sometimes, when I lock up late at night, I still think of the ballroom, the hush before the truth hit them, the electricity of justice finally speaking in my voice. It doesn't feel like revenge anymore. It feels like art. Because that painting, the Alcántara family, no longer hangs in my mind. I tore it down brushstroke by brushstroke. And in its place, a new canvas is drying. Smaller, quieter, imperfect. But it's mine. Entirely mine. So when people ask me if I regret what I did, I tell them this. I didn't destroy a family. I ended an illusion. And then I smile. Not the smile I used to practice at their dinners, but the kind that comes from breathing freely, from surviving the fire and realizing the ashes smell like freedom. 'Cause sometimes, burning the frame is the only way to step out of the picture.